G'day Darkrealmers, it's horror author and illustrator Michael J. Elliott here with you again today. And today I'm going to be reviewing the horror anthology Dark Screams Volume 6. Hey, if this is your first trip to the Diaries, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to keep up with the best in horror from book reviews, movie reviews, creepypasta and trivia, then hit that bell notification and the subscribe icon and you'll always be in the loop. Okay, Darkrealmers, this is a great series of stories by some of the masters, including Stephen King. So we'll get to it right now. Yeah. Okay, Darkrealmers, well, Dark Screams is number 6 in the series. And I picked it up because it's a very cheap read. I mean, where else are you going to get a Stephen King story for under $2, plus others? And it's a great read, it really is. Now, some of the stories left me flat, but that happens in anthologies. Stephen King is the first cab off the rank, and the story he wrote is his take on Poe's The Telltale Heart. And he goes on in a foreword to explain that he wrote this very early on in his marriage when he was working 2 jobs, one as a high school English teacher and one at a laundrette at night. And during this period he was selling quite a lot of short stories, but this was one he couldn't sell. And he couldn't work out why. He thought it was a good story. And he takes Poe's Telltale Heart, and the protagonist in this is a Vietnam vet who has a lot of problems since returning from Vietnam, and that gives it an interesting twist. And it's also a throwback to see King write 70s dialogue and 70s slang and so forth, and that's quite a nice little tale. Then you've got The Manicure, and that's very different. A woman who has this phobia about her nails being cut actually goes to a manicurist, and instead of it being divided into chapters, it's divided up into fingers that are being cut by the manicurist. And as each finger, the manicurist cuts each fingernail, we learn more and more about this woman's paranoia and her phobia about her nails and what's happened and why she's like this. Very good at it and intense. But the standout story for me has to be Tim Curran's The Corpse King. Now, this author I'd never heard of before, but it's the story of 2 grave robbers, Kearney and Clow. And Tim Curran is just absolutely brilliant at describing the horror, not just of grave robbing, but of the poverty in 19th century Scotland. It's brilliantly evocative, where we hear about, like the open sewers in the streets, and people pouring their urine out the windows, and animal feces everywhere, and rats, and people sleeping with bed bugs, and butchers selling rancid meat, and people not knowing about sanitation, and that's horrifying in itself. But his descriptions of Kearney and Clow going on grave robbing trips is just frightening, because just the way they do, and they're doing it in such a way that they're just 2 ordinary men earning a living, even though it's illegal. And you learn a great deal about the time period with this story too, because this is actually the last in the book, but it's the longest because it's a novella, so it's great reading. And the reason it was illegal at the time is because only criminals, I don't know if this applied in Scotland, but in England only condemned criminals who'd been executed could be sent to anatomy schools for research, and of course there was a problem of supply and demand. Okay, too many medical schools and doctors wanting bodies for autopsies, but not enough criminals, hence the grave robbing trade. But what's frightening in this story, Darkrealmers, is that there is something living in what's called the North Grounds, which is become a legend amongst the grave robbers, and there's stories of something evil in there, you know, and of course they don't believe it because this is where the best bodies get buried. But there is something there, Dark Realms, and Tim Curran cleverly doesn't let us see or know what this is right at the start when the two grave robbers encounter it, okay? We're given clues. There's huge burrows being, you know, made underground under these coffins, and tombstones that have been tipped over because of this burrowing, and they try and convince themselves it's just a colony of rats. Well, it's more. Now, they encounter this corpse king, but they don't see it straight away, and it's very clever because you're wondering, are they going to get away from this thing? They know something's there. It's brilliantly atmospheric. Look, this is a great read, Darkrealmers. You know, for under $2, you're doing yourself a real favour, and possibly reading some stories by authors you may not know of before. Now, I'm going to be reviewing the other 5 in the series as I read them and getting back to you on those, but this I'm sure is going to be a great series because I've noted that just from what I've looked for in the other books, there's some great A-list writers there, including Clive Barker himself, okay? So check this one out for yourselves, Darkrealmers. Now, it's available on Amazon, and I'm sure it's available on other e-readers, but it's a great investment in giving yourself a great chill and something a little bit different, okay? Because some of the stories are a little bit, you know, have you scratching your head a little bit. Okay, Darkrealmers, well, that's my review of Dark Screams Volume 6. I'll be back again soon with another review for you, and until then, Darkrealmers, buy yourselves a copy, but make sure when you do, you stay in the light. Bye for now.